What on earth are you doing there? Have you been under this rock the whole time? Well, no wonder you don't know what's going on. Come on. You've missed a lot in the last couple of weeks. Let's finish this video inside because out there it's about 109 degrees and yeah, I don't do that. But before we jump into everything that has happened in the 2024 MotoGP silly season, if you could please subscribe here and help us grow on YouTube. And fun little fact, I happen to respond to basically every single comment. So come on, join the fun. Now down to business, because the 2024 MotoGP silly season was billed as maybe the greatest ever, the wildest ever, the most unpredictable ever, and boy, has it delivered. And I know in the last few weeks, all we've been talking about is Ducati and Marquez and Martin and Bastianini and all that stuff, but let's go back to the very beginning and recap the whole thing so we all know where we stand right now. First, let's talk about why this MotoGP silly season was supposed to be the most epic ever. Well, that was because nearly every single rider on the grid had a contract due at the end of this season. Everyone, with the exception of basically Brad Binder and Pecco Bagnaia, were free agents at the end of this year. And the first big free agent everyone wanted to know where they were going was Fabio Quartararo. I have said for the last few years, I think he's the most talented rider on the grid. And the reason I say that is he's been competitive for the MotoGP title and won the MotoGP title on not even close to the best bike on the grid. So Fabio Quartararo wasn't going to stay with Yamaha. I mean, why would he? Where was he going to go? And the hot money was on Aprilia. Now, I personally don't think Aprilia is the magic bullet that everyone else seems to think it is to win a world title. People were basically like, oh, Fabio, just leave Yamaha, go to Aprilia already, win that world title. I don't think it's going to be that easy because they haven't put a bike underneath anybody that can win week in and week out. They win where they're strong, they don't do well where they're not. But again, they don't have an elite rider, and it looked like Fabio Quartararo was just that guy. But hold the phone, he decides to stay at Yamaha, surprising everybody. Whether you want to believe it's because Yamaha offered him a big fat pile of money or they really do have a path forward to get him back and contending for the title, it doesn't really matter. Because the contract was signed and Fabio is staying at Yamaha for the next 2 years. I personally think it has a lot to do with, yes, he believes Yamaha can get back to the front, but also it's a good place to be at a big manufacturer when we're going into these new rule changes in 2027. Because Yamaha is going to have more resources at their disposal than a team like Aprilia does. They've got bigger pockets, that's all I'm trying to say. And there is going to become a big financial choice for a lot of these manufacturers in 2026. Do they put the money on the circuit for the 2026 season, or do they look ahead to the 2027 season and try to get a jump on the competition? And the big factories like Yamaha have a better chance of possibly doing both well. Or if they're running at the back of the grid anyway in 2026, maybe they scrap the whole thing and just focus on the future. And Fabio Quartararo knows those options are at his disposal now. So after Fabio makes his deal, the big question on everybody's mind is who is going to be Pecco Bagnaia's teammate? Marc Marquez, Enea Bastianini, or Jorge Martin? And I had said very early on the only way Enea Bastianini saved his seat at factory Ducati was coming out with his hair on fire. Or as he would put it, riding like a bastard. He basically had to beat the other two in every single race, lead the championship, wins. I mean, just he would had to have been undeniable, but he really wasn't. So it was really a two-horse race between Jorge Martin and Marc Marquez. So who do you pick? The 8 times world champion who, while getting used to the Ducati, is also putting himself on the podium? Or the current world championship points leader, Jorge Martin, who is on fire, is very, very fast. Well, Ducati wanted their cake and their Marquez too, because they were trying to figure out a way to keep them both. They knew what Jorge wanted to be happy. He wanted that seat next to Pecco Bagnaia. Anything else was a non-starter. But Marc Marquez was saying, all I want is the latest spec factory machinery. I don't care if it's on the red bike, or the Gresini bike, or the KTM bike. So Ducati thought they could have it all. They keep Martin happy by moving him to that red factory bike next to Pecco Bagnaia, and they keep Marc Marquez happy by moving him to Pramac and giving him the latest spec machinery. But hold the presses, don't print that just yet, MotoGP journalists, because Marc Marquez has a little bit of a counter offer up his sleeve. Marc Marquez says, it's fine, Ducati. If you don't want to give me the big red factory bike with the big red factory contract, I will stay here in independent team land. But I'm staying at Gresini. Pramac? Not an option for me. And that's where everything changed because Ducati was looking to basically run the trifecta. Keep Jorge, keep Marquez, and keep Pramac from moving over to Yamaha. And Marc Marquez knew that if they went to Pramac and said, hey, you have to give one of those 2025 machines to Gresini for Marc Marquez, Pramac would have said, nah, we'll take the Yamaha deal. And that would disrupt the entire Ducati ecosystem. They love having Pramac as that #1 independent team. That's where they groom their factory riders. That's where they get Pecco Bagnaias and the Jorge Martins. But Marc Marquez was sticking them between a rock and a hard place. He knows how valuable he is to this brand. So what were they going to do? Say goodbye to Pramac by giving one of the machines to Gresini for Marc Marquez, keeping Marc in in the family, letting Marc go? No, they double back, say, sorry, Jorge, that factory contract, the ink was not dry yet. We actually didn't make that offer. Pretend that never happened. In actuality, they basically asked Jorge Martin for a little more time to try to work out a deal that would keep both him and Marc Marquez in the Ducati family. But Jorge Martin said, I've given you guys so much time already. Think about it from his perspective. He watched Enea Bastianini take a seat he rightfully thought was his. He now watches Marc Marquez come in, and they're negotiating really hard to keep Marc Marquez and not negotiating that hard to keep him. So he says goodbye, he signs a midnight deal with Aprilia, so Aprilia now has their elite rider, and we will see if that bike is really as good as everyone thinks it is. And Marc Marquez gets everything he wants. He gets to ride the newest machinery for the Red Factory Ducati team, he gets that factory contract, and he gets one of his main rivals off the same bike he's riding. And then Enea Bastianini finally goes, hey guys, remember me? Yeah, I also used to ride for Ducati. I say used to because I'm going over to KTM. I'm signing a contract there, and we're gonna kick y'all's ass. I don't know if he really said that last part, but yeah, you never know. And that is a big chunk of the silly season done, but it is not over. It's going to be very, very interesting where the rest of these riders sit, and also what Jorge Martin gets as far as support from the factory at Ducati now that they know he's leaving for Aprilia next year.